It's about time I made a full lore overview of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, so let's just get into it. No annoying, drawn-out intro. First, I just want to say it's revealed through a figure description that the smell of the Cafe Waddle Dee's food is how the Beast Pack found them. His good cooking caused the downfall of the Waddle Dee's entire village. That is both the funniest and saddest thing ever. Okay, now on to serious stuff. The Forgotten Land is most likely on Earth/Shiver Star. Either the Rift sent Kirby back in time a bit, or Shiver Star finally thawed out. I found this second option to be more likely, as we do see one giant snow area still there. And we only get to see 2 islands, so who knows how much snow is out there. I shouldn't have to explain why this is the most likely location, just look at Shiver Star yourself. One of the first real pieces of lore we get is of this super corporation named Lytron. Lytron has vast knowledge in everything. One that particularly stands out is bio, which is short for biology, which leads me to believe that all the animals in Forgotten Land are genetically modified by the humans for certain tasks. But one day, something happened to Lytron, and they all disbanded into their own companies. It's my belief that Hallline and Alival were created after the split, though if you take the first letter of each company, it spells Hal, which is one of the things that Hal likes to do, which is hide their name in random places. But it would also imply that they were some kind of trio, like they all fit together into one big thing. 2 possible companies that emerged from this break outside of the obvious ones that I just mentioned are Haltman Works Co. and Nightmare Enterprises. Okay, I seriously doubt Nightmare worked at Lytron, but he is one of the most human-looking characters, and he's also referred to as a man rather than a demonic entity or something, so it's just something to think about. We actually get a fully named human character mentioned, Wandaria. Wandaria was a writer who wrote stories about 2 dogs that went to space, and they were so popular that there was an entire amusement park built dedicated to him. Basically, it's the Disney equivalent in the Kirby universe. Now, something I find incredibly creepy is that the ghosts that haunt the House of Horrors look very similar to the cutout aliens that are found there. Why are there ghosts there in the first place? My first theory is that a terrible accident occurred there, which is possible if you look at how dangerous the House of Horrors is, and keep in mind that it's supposed to be an attraction for kids. Now, it is more likely that the Beast Packs just rearranged this area to be dangerous, but it's still worth noting. My second theory is that the ghosts in the Kirby world just choose to reside in the creepiest or darkest places they can find. This is much more likely since you can find them in a lot of cave-like areas. In Winterhorns, we see a large clock tower that resembles Big Ben, which might mean this area takes place in London, which would be our first basis of where on Earth the Forgotten Land actually is. I don't know much about geography or locations, so I don't know what to make of this. In World 5, we get some very interesting names. The world is called Original Wastelands, and the first level is called The Wastes Where Life Began. Everything about this screams, this is the first area ever created by Void Termina. Origin, null, meaning nothing, meaning void, where life began, as if it was where the existence of living things was conceived. Now, through the description of the Primal Woofy, we know this is where the Beast Pack was formed. However, if that's all it was referring to, then why isn't this called The Wastes Where Life Was Reborn? Because that is an equally cryptic name. So they could have just gone with that. They didn't just start living, they just took on a new identity. And the null part doesn't make sense either. What does nothing have to do with the Beast Pack? I think this was done intentionally just to throw us off from the truth being that this was the first world Void Termina created. Now for my annoying tangent about why Kirby Right Back At Ya is canon and the things in this game that strengthen the idea. First, Kirby's Warp Star appears to be sentient in the intro and communicating with Kirby, just like in Kirby Mass Attack, which I connected the Warp Star and the Heroic Heart that are one and the same, because in the anime, Kirby's power source is the Warp Star, and because it just makes sense. Now you could say that the Waddle Dee's hopping on a second Warp Star deconfirms this, but not only is that dubious if that should even count, but it could just be Kirby utilizing his ability to create things from memory, because why the heck would he not use such an overpowered ability ever again? Waddle Dees go crazy for food, just like in the anime. Kirby's house reappears, which was built by the characters from the anime. You might say this game confirms Kirby can talk because of Elfilin's responses to Kirby, but Elfilin also responds this way to Clawrelin, who canonically cannot talk. So Elfilin must be some kind of crazy mind reader, basing all of these things purely off of their expressions. Meta Knight's theme is called Sword of the Surviving Guardian. While you might say this refers to him being the only protector of Waddle Dee Town, for one, Kirby exists, and it's not like anyone died. There's no reason to call him the only survivor. This name is a nod to when Meta Knight was the only surviving Star Warrior, which is basically a guardian of the entire universe. On the topic of Meta Knight, this is not about Kirby right back at you being canon, but on the topic of Meta Knight, some people have been saying when you steal Meta Knight's sword, he pulls out his original sword, or even the Master Sword from Amazing Mirror. There was no original sword. It's the same sword it always has been. Just back when Kirby lore wasn't very big or steep, his sword looked different. This is just a nod to that. The Kirby Dream Collection book confirms this. Kirby Mass Attack also confirms this, because in that game, in the sub-games, Meta Knight's sword looks normal in game, looks like the old version in gameplay, but in the secret encounter against the sword itself, it looks like it's how it actually looks. Showing that it just looks like that because the sprite is too small to show his sword in full glory. Okay, now it's time to get to the big stuff. First up, Forgo Dreams' mask resembles a boar, and when he goes into his second phase, he even runs like one. But nothing past this point in the game has anything to do with boars. My only guess is that this mask was made to resemble one of Leongar's lost or dead friends, or one that was taken to a different planet. Now, I'm sure whoever he is will have significance in the future, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Then, biggest lore drops happen. I'm sure you've all heard this a million times, so I'm just gonna condense it. One day, a crazy alien, Fecto Elfilis, arrives on Earth and begins destroying and killing like crazy. It almost wiped out the entirety of the world's natural wildlife. But the smart people got together and used this thing called the Eternal Capsule to capture it. Then the people would study this creature and siphon its warp ability for space travel. 30 years later, during a warp experiment, something went wrong, and Fecto Elfilis was split into two. The smaller half, Elfilin, escaped and was never seen again. Meanwhile, the bigger half, Fecto Forgo, went into eternal sleep. Notice the game only says spatial teleportation abilities, not dimensional ones or time. Forgotten Land only takes place on another planet. No another dimension bull, no time travel bull. Anyway, what happened was a small part of Elfilis didn't like all the destruction he was committing, so when this accident occurred, that part of Elfilis' brain finally escaped, almost like a split personality of some sort. Or actually, as the game puts it, it was a small, compassionate soul hiding behind its desires. Then we immediately get another big lore drop from Leongar. He is a little more vague, but it's pretty easy to understand. The humans used the warp technology to leave Earth forever and enter a land of dreams. It's highly likely that this place is Dreamland, given the name. Now what's odd is how Leongar and the Beast Pack were left behind. combined with the fact that we still find normal animals like ducks, seagulls, and crabs, that the humans only took the animals that were necessary. And Goliath, who is on Popstar, is evidence of this, since Goliath is very clearly related to Goromando. So the Beast Pack are the ones that were deemed less valuable. Goliath also shows this as well, as he can do all kinds of magic, while Goromando can't do magic at all. Now it's worth noting that Wandaria is also considered a land of dreams, so it could be purely figurative, like how the Jamba people were searching for their paradise. Lore means paradise. The Lore Starcutter can open star-shaped portals. Everything's starting to make a lot more sense. A lot of people used to think that star-shaped portals mean that another dimension was involved or Magalore was involved, but now we know that anything that uses a star-shaped portal is related to Fecto Elfilis. The lore, the novas, even the crystal shards, all of these are creations from the ancients that use Elfilis's power. This may even give us insight into what the magic ancients did. While the science ancients used Elfilis's magic in machines only, the Jamba people absorbed the magic into themselves. This may be one of the reasons the Jamba people were considered outcasts. It was inhuman to use magic. Heck, I think I just solved why the Haltmans and the Mage Sisters look like humans, but very clearly aren't. Countless Kirby characters have this floating thing going on, with floating hands and no legs. But in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the only character with this ability to levitate is Elfilis. Now, I want to say that this was also because people actually complained a lot about how many Kirby characters were using that Rayman-esque design, so they might have just changed it because of complaints, but whatever. Flying is obviously more convenient than walking, and maybe they even decided that limbs were unneeded when you can just have floating hands. One thing that kinda throws a wrench in this theory is that all the ancient things use a completely different language than the one we see in Forgotten Land, but we could just say that they moved to different planets, that as they moved to different planets, their language evolved and changed once again. And heck, even Highness's runes are different from the other runes you can find. And those things are definitely related. Okay, that's enough about the ancients. Fecto Forgo is labeled as a invasive species, which would imply that there might be more of them out there, which is a terrifying thought. Its description says that all the animals were slowly being corrupted just by being in the same world as it. One thing I've seen no one mention is how Lab Discoverer looks like they took an entire city, put it in a giant capsule, and then put it on top of a freaking volcano. I'd assume the capsule protected it from the heat, but still, why would you put a city on a volcano? And why is there a whole city just for a lab? Is that just like the smart people city only? Let's move to Forgo Dreams already. First up, this whole area is based on Forgo's memories, so we could use that to see what Forgo thought of different locations and people, but I'm not too sure if this is accurate. Like, does Forgo only remember the plains for having Mookies everywhere? Forgo definitely thinks of everyone negatively, though, as seen by the Phantoms. But most importantly, in Lab Discoverer, we hear this.
And here we are. Well, visitors. Automatic language detection. And here we are.
Forgo is basically haunted by this sound, as it seems to just go off randomly even after all the tours have stopped. This is all Forgo hears for the rest of its entire life since the humans left. Leongar was taken out of the bunch of animals it absorbed just to be a host, and it was planning on attacking the Forgotten Land in this form. As for the other animals, well... The Ultimate Cup Z, which is 100% canon, by the way, carries a lot of stuff. First up, Phantom Meta Knight, which says that Forgo tried to possess Meta Knight, but Meta Knight's will was so strong that it failed, and all the leftover energy created this. It specifically mentions that this thing is not in Forgo Dreams, meaning this thing's dreams can just escape into other dimensions, which is a very scary thought. Next, of course, we have Chaos Elfilis. Now, while this thing is called Chaos Elfilis, everything about this thing behaves just like a soul boss. Even how it was created, absorbing parts of animals and Morphonite, just like how Mark's soul was formed when he absorbed parts of the Nova. When his core is removed, this horrifying theme plays once again. This noise has bothered Forgo for so long that it became the song that's sung straight from its core. Now when it dies, we see this. Those poor animals that were absorbed by Fecto Forgo never made it out. This is one of the darkest things in a Kirby game, because while there is scary stuff everywhere, there's very few times when a non-pure evil character actually dies. Highness, even after sacrificing himself to Void Termina willingly, still lives in the end. Dark Meta Knight, even being the completely irredeemable edgelord he is, still lives in the end. But these goofy little animals, they are completely dead. You may notice that I left out a bunch of important characters. That's because I'm going to have separate videos on them. So subscribe and hit the bell to stay tuned for those. Bye. Okay, I know it's supposed to be subscribe and hit the bell, but this script that I'm reading says subscribe and hit the ball. I swear that wasn't intentional, but that is just the most amazing thing, guys. Subscribe and hit the ball. And stay tuned for the next videos. Bye.